Good morning, everyone. Hi, so great to be with all of you today. My name is Amber Cox. I am the Chief Operating Officer for Kansas City NWSL. NWSL stands for National Women's Soccer League. Super excited to be with all of you this morning to talk about a topic that's near and dear to my heart: cultivating an audience through advocacy, social responsibility, and utilizing the values of your organization and what you stand for to really drive a passionate fan base and lots of engagement. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background on me. So I grew up in Missouri, which was part of the reason I moved back to Kansas City from New England. Played basketball in college and really started my career in small college athletics. And that's important for a couple of reasons, which I'll get to in a little bit. I worked for about 5 years as an assistant athletic director at a small college, also in Missouri, before eventually becoming the director of marketing for the Phoenix Mercury of the WNBA. And that was in about 2005. So for those of you who follow sports, it was really good timing. It was about the time that Diana Taurasi was drafted to the Phoenix Mercury. So good timing on my part to arrive then. She's obviously the greatest of all time. So I was there for about 9 years and eventually became the president of basketball and business operations for the Mercury. In 2014, I went to the Big East Conference in New York, where I ran women's basketball. So that was the tournament, all of the logistics behind a basketball season for those teams. And then from there, I went to Houston and was the chief marketing officer for the MLS team and the NWSL team there. So that was really my first step into soccer. A great 2-year experience there. And then went back to Connecticut, where most recently I was running the WNBA team, the Connecticut Sun, there in Connecticut. So as you can see, the bulk of my path has been in sports, and in particular, women's sports. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how I believe, some of those experience. Hopefully I can share some of those today, and they will translate into what all of you are working toward in your respective organizations and markets. I think, when you talk about smaller organizations and what I'll call emerging leagues, the WNBA is now in its 25th season. The Women's Pro Soccer League is in its 9th year. Those are still relatively young leagues. We're very proud of how far we've come, but there's still so much opportunity for growth. So when you think about, a league like the NBA, they've been around 75, baseball's been around 100 years, that's generational. So what we're doing right now in women's pro sports is really building that foundation of the first generation. And I say all that, I think it's really relevant to what you're doing. And some markets are probably more developed in terms of their audience and what you're organizing each and every year than others. I would say for the smaller markets, things take time. It takes time to develop that, passionate base that becomes your advocates in your market, your influencers. So, there have been many times when I've tried various things and it hasn't necessarily worked, but it's back to the drawing board. So early on, my message here is, trial and error. You really do have to throw a lot of lines in the water to find sort of the right chemistry and mix to really start building that. And it does take time. I think, again, it's always about casting a wider net. So how do you do that? We've all got our social media channels. A lot of times we've got a really engaged, focused group through our social media channels. So for instance, if it's your, Facebook, for example, and you're posting, there's always, probably a lot of the same people liking and mentioning. the really great thing about where we are today in the world with technology, I think you could say this is really good. There's a lot of digital and social media opportunities to cast a wider net, and it doesn't cost a ton of money. So I'm sure a lot of you do this, but utilizing tools that Facebook may offer or that Google may offer to really go in and make sure that your event, your organization, special announcements leading up to your event are, maybe you put a little money behind those things in order to help reach a broader audience and get people pulled in to become your organic following. Because as we all know, social media changes every single day. The algorithms of the various platforms change every day, which can make it challenging, right? I'm not an expert in that field. But a lot of times, probably somebody you have either a volunteer or member on your staff who can get into those things and help navigate. But it really does create an opportunity in a very affordable fashion to cast a wider net. We've done that a lot in the various organizations that I've worked for. It's been a mix of advertising, whether it's, traditional, when you're talking about some radio, some television, a little bit of digital. Actually, that's where we spend the bulk, is that digital piece. So again, utilizing that depending on what the message is, and that can change over the course of a year. So a good example that I will share is when I was in Houston, we were having our annual Pride Night, and two of our players at the time had just gotten married, and they had these beautiful wedding photos, and they were gracious enough to let us create this incredible post about, incorporating some of their messaging and some of their photos, also talking about, our team is for everyone, if you will, right? Our this night is to celebrate love. Come join us for Pride Night. So that post, because it was so different, because it was so personal with our, celebrities, our assets, which are our players, it really gained a ton of traction and allowed us to cast a wider net. And ultimately, more people purchased tickets to that Pride game that had never been to a game before. They came because they wanted to support, the effort, the cause. They love the messaging. They wanted to learn more about these players. And that really created an opportunity to create long-term fans. So I say all of that because chances are through the course of a year, obviously you're thinking about Pride, but you're likely doing other things to fundraise. So really use those opportunities to target your message. Try different things. One may be focused at a certain type of audience. Again, I'll use an example. I told you about Pride Night, but we may have a breast health awareness initiative. So we're focused on cancer survivor groups and various organizations that, again, help us reach a wider audience other than those that are just fans of the team that might want to come out and be a part of what we're doing because it is associated with a cause that's near and dear to their heart. And then from there, it's about making sure we have a conversation. Hey, did you have a good time? Do you want to come back? So on the back end, that surveying piece is really important. The data collection piece is really important. Build that database every time you get the opportunity to do so. So, again, we're talking about revenue generation and fan building specific to women's sports. Again, not that much different than what you're trying to do, right? You're trying to do the things via your various channels to create interest, engagement, and ultimately people coming to your event and engaging with the various things that you're doing throughout the course of a year. So, another thing that you can absolutely try is contesting, right? Like, people ask questions. What would you like to see? What if we have a special event and you give away a couple of tickets? Those things always drive engagement as well, in addition to asking people to share. And again, this is where your core group is really important because they can also help you cast that wider net. Question here, what's been the best survey method? Something as easy as SurveyMonkey is a great tool to be able to push out surveys to your database. And another great opportunity to help cast a wider net is to ask some of your partners. If you have a presenting partner of your respective pride, ask them to send something out to their database. Again, you're likely reaching some people through that method that maybe are not following you on social media. And even if it's as simple as, will you attend? What would you like to see? And then just asking for a name and email and an opt-in. Again, you're growing that database, which is so important so you can hit them time and time again. And then anytime you're posting something, always make sure there is a call to action. And what I mean by that is, if it's registering to attend an event, if it's just asking for a name and email, if it's asking for a follow, if it's asking for a share, always give that thought. You don't want everything to be, salesy necessarily, but at least every time you're going in to do something via your social media channels, and Instagram is obviously a little bit different, so I'll kind of set that one aside. But especially on Facebook and Twitter, and those are real opportunities to get people to engage and to ask them to take action on your behalf. So when you're writing your copy, think about, is this an appropriate time and place to put some sort of call to action to see if I can generate more engagement, more interest, cast that wider net. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about today is just social responsibility and how that has really been a driving force. And I'm going to talk specifically about my time in Connecticut, and especially over the last year. I think all of you, I'm sure, have sat down and talked about your mission statement. What are the values of the organization? What are you trying to accomplish in your respective communities? That authentic mission is so important to revisit on a regular basis, because it's very easy to drift off track a little bit. We all kind of get pulled in one direction or another. Come back to that mission statement. And I tell you that because, last summer, as we were going through, obviously the pandemic, and then social justice became the focal point of our country. And if you were following it all in the WNBA, you really saw that the women of the WNBA took that on head on and did some tremendous things around social justice. Now, a really interesting tidbit. So the entire WNBA season was played in a bubble last year. They were in Bradenton, Florida. They were basically in hotel rooms and condos for about 3 months and stayed in that one area and played an entire season. It's pretty amazing to think about. And I was not in that bubble. I was back in Connecticut. We had I had to be back coordinating other things. So it was an interesting journey to go through with them, because they were in the heart of the season, having these conversations around social justice. And, even though we weren't together, the most important thing was staying true to, what was in their hearts and on their minds. And, out of the gates, as things started to unfold last summer, the players came to me and said, words are one thing, but we have got to take action. And what is our next step? And we really worked together based on their feedback, based on what they were passionate about, to put together a long-term platform that was really reflective, again, of those values and the mission of the league, right? So we created what's called the Change Can't Wait platform. You could go to the Connecticut Sun website and take a look at that. And again, we really wanted some action items that could be sustainable and were really, in line with the foundation of what the WNBA has always been about, right? Education, opportunity, inclusion, diversity, and really finding ways to amplify those messages. And through that, we've created these tremendous partnerships, right, with people throughout Connecticut who weren't necessarily engaged with the Connecticut Sun. So by really, again, staying true to that mission statement, staying true to the values of the organization, listening to our, key employees, if you will, about, again, what was on their minds and in their hearts, and really letting them help us drive what this was going to look like. Connecticut really has this platform that can live for years and years to come. So, again, as you're looking for opportunities, maybe outside of, the Pride Festival, to do things in the community, really keep that in mind, as you're looking for partners to come on board with you, make sure the value and the mission statement really make a lot of sense. Because when you do that, you've got people that are helping spread the word, amplify your message, and then collectively do great things in the community. So a good example of this is one of our players was very passionate about making sure that we were continually promoting a Black-owned business in Connecticut. And that has just been phenomenal. We send our camera crew out, we sit down with our team reporter and do a great piece featuring a Black-owned business in Connecticut. As a result of that, it's created these conversations about, okay, we've done this together. What else can we do? What can we do when we get to the season that, it's not only continuing to amplify the message, but also partner together? I want to come to games. I want to be a part of what you're doing because it aligns with what our beliefs are and what we're trying to do in the community. So it is absolutely one of the best examples in terms of utilizing, something that is going on in the world that, just it was so heavy, right, and difficult. And I just commend, these players who in that moment really helped develop something that created really positive action in the community where they play. So it all comes down to the values and that mission statement, and making sure that you are really staying true to that. There's always got to be action behind it. Again, that was a really important piece. We knew in the midst of it, in the heart of it, we could put out words and put out a statement. We did put out a statement at the time, but it really was about creating some sustainable conversations and action in the community that can live on, even when the players change again, right? As your board members change, creating those opportunities and advocates. And I would say too, kind of going back to the survey idea, in addition to what was going on with the players and creating this platform, it's amazing what we all learned how to do virtually, right? I mean, look at us here today. We have learned how to conduct day-to-day business. So again, our entire season was happening in a bubble at the time. So fans weren't able to come to games. We weren't able to all come together as in any form as we typically have. So, like all of you, I'm sure we learned to do things virtually. And that really was a great experience as well. So we had tons of town halls with our season ticket members throughout the season. Some really focused on, specific topics like social responsibility. Some were really fun and just check-ins with players to make sure they, really felt like they were getting some behind the scenes access. So I would say that's another opportunity for all of you to really think about what is that, VIP, if you will, even in the time of, we're still coming back from COVID. What are those opportunities that you can provide to someone who maybe wants to opt in at a higher level, right? We've all got those people that are, the super fans, big time advocates. They want more access. They want to do more. What are those opportunities? How can you create those experiences that are great for the person, but also drive revenue for you as well, right? We know that people are going to opt in and do more. And you can do that in a number of ways, right? Like there are packages you can build. You can also build incremental add-ons. Like a good example would be something like food and beverage, right? Or if you're doing something at the beach and it's the add-on of the chair and the blanket and the premium spot, right? Some people will really pay for those things. So give that some thought when you're looking at your entire experience. Really break it up into pieces. Really look at it from the time, talking specifically about the Pride events, the entry point to the exit point. What are all the stops along the way? And are there ways that you can create a premium experience and maybe have an upsell opportunity for those people that have the means and are willing to pay for those things? And, again, really use your prime fans and advocates to give you feedback through that process, right? Like, you've got sort of a focus group that's coming together outside of maybe your board. As you're planning those things, it's always good. We always get really too close to some of these things, right? Like, we stare at it long enough and you're like, man, this is a great idea. But, if you sit in a room with fans or attendees, they might, and let them kind of poke holes in it. A lot of times that will help you head things off at the pass. One of the things that I always do, no matter what team I've worked for, is, we talked about the town halls specific to the bubble season. But once, even outside of COVID, always at the start of every season, always at a midpoint check-in, and always at the end of the season, I would give fans the opportunity to come in, sit, and it was an open forum. And sometimes it could be tough. There are things that, are hard to hear, or people might have a lot of complaints, but we all want to be heard, right? Everybody wants to be heard. They want to have a voice. And especially, like, if they're passionate about what you're doing, that's a good thing. What's bad is when you don't hear from someone, right? The people that don't open the emails, the ones that are sending you feedback all the time, or want to talk to you about how you change something. Those are your passionate fans, and those are the ones that are going to really help you build something special in your respective markets. And again, I think, in each scenario, I'm going to go back to, social media and how you're selling leading up. Make it personal, right? Like, tell stories. Storytelling is so important in everything we do in terms of marketing and advertising. And when you look at women's sports, I think, the teams have had to be more creative. Now, you can sort of feel a shift in the world happening. Hopefully, the more traditional outlets are starting to give more love to women's sports, but that hasn't always been the case. So teams have had to be really creative and use their content team. So if you have that video person available to you that can, do sit-down interviews or talk about people that have had a great time at a Pride festival in the past, or maybe talk about how a youth program that you've implemented has really changed someone's life, those are really great opportunities to, hook people, tug at the heartstrings, right? So a great example, the Connecticut Sun a couple of years ago had a Pride night, and we partnered with outCT, had been tremendous partners through all the years that I was there, and I'm sure will continue to be. Our head coach, his name is Kurt Miller, is a gay man, and I believe he's the only gay male head coach of any major sports league. So we really used Kurt's story as an opportunity to, again, it's all about casting that wider net. So not only locally, we set him up to talk about his journey, but also with the New York Times, right? And there was a great piece on Kurt ahead of our Pride night, not only in our local paper, but also in the New York Times, talking about his journey and his path to, coming out, how difficult that had been at various points in his life, the sense of ownership and responsibility that he feels now to be a mentor to other young people who are struggling with that, and then talk about some things in his personal life. That story connected Kurt, not only, more so with our LGBTQ plus friends in our community, but nationally, right? He really has become a spokesperson and represents the Connecticut Sun and all, again, goes back to that value and mission statement and all that we stand for. So making it really personal is important. I really believe in that. We had a woman on our soccer team who had retired and came back from retirement. And, it's pretty can be a relatively normal thing. Somebody decides they want to come back and play. And she told an incredible story to the local paper about how she was struggling with depression. We got so much inbound from that, talking about how important it was that she shared that story from, all of our fans to young people. Again, that's making a connection beyond just what's going on in the soccer field, right? And makes it less transactional because you feel really connected to the people, to the organization. You feel great about giving your money to an organization that is doing so much good in the community and what they stand for. So really think about that as you kind of look around at your landscape. And again, everything in your sort of stratosphere that you touch every day and the things that you're doing. And like we all check off the list, right? But really stop and take a look at, what makes this really personal? What is a story that we can tell here that somebody is willing to share that might touch the hearts of a broader community? And then I'm gonna go right back to that very first thing we talked about in terms of social media. If you get some really great stuff and somebody is willing to share, that's an opportunity to, do some paid social media, maybe cast a wider net so more people are getting eyeballs on that great story. And then that call to action where you're saying, want to be a part of our organization, click here, you collect their data. So there is definitely a sequence to the process, right? You want to pull people in, walk them up the ladder from, hey, I'm interested, I'm watching this, all the way to I'm attending the event. I'm giving you my money because I support you, I believe in what you're doing, and I want to be a part of that. And then, very simple stuff, right? Like we all have a little bit of FOMO at times. So I'm sure all of you have incredible photos or videos from, and especially now, right? Like we all want to be back together again. We all want to be doing the things that we were doing a few years ago. So, use those opportunities to really get people excited to be a part of what you're planning for this year. And then, find your influencers. And this is a little different than what we were talking about earlier. And I'm sure all of you have them in your various locations. Politicians are fantastic if it makes, if it makes sense and somebody is, really wants to support you and has supported you in an authentic way, use them to tell your story. Or if you do post something that is very, you feel like you've just captured gold and it's something you think more people should know about, ask them to share. Those are really, seems, like very basic, but those things can really make things go viral very, very quickly. If you use your influencers, find those people in your community who do have big followers, who are willing to come on board and be a part of what you're doing and share your story. And I'll just share a couple more, these are really examples of staying true to those core values and aligning with the right partners. Yesterday, the WNBA announced everybody got new jerseys basically. And Nike just did a tremendous job, with that jersey launch. And if you look at the Connecticut Sun jersey launch in particular, all the teams are aligned with something in their community, but I'm partial. The Mohegan tribe was really at the heart of everything that we did in terms of planning the details of those jerseys. So again, the tie back is so authentic and it is about telling the story. And as you get into that, it's not just about it's a great looking jersey. It's about telling the story of the tribe that is really steeped in the women leaders who have, been at the forefront of their leadership for hundreds of years, right? And that ties into the social responsibility and the Change Can't Wait platform. So all the dots start to really connect again when you stay true to those core values. You're not just putting out merchandise, for example. You're doing something that really, has a bigger meaning. when you're with everything that you're doing. So think about those things. Again, things as simple as merchandise. Those are the things that are walking around advertising you the rest of the year. Really think about, what you want that to say about your organization, and where you can, and you all do this, I know, tie it back to the community. So yesterday in Kansas City women's soccer, we launched our jersey for the first part of the season, and are going to auction those jerseys off whenever the first few games are over, and that money is going to go back to a local nonprofit. So again, it's just, it's about creating a good feeling, right? A good feeling for everybody who does support you, that when they are attending your event or engaging with you in some way, that it's really coming from a more of a place than I'm just buying something or I'm coming to your event. So I don't know if anybody has any questions. I think I'm in the right spot here. And, I'll just talk more transactional things. As you are going through the process of selling your event, and thinking about the next year, again, you're very much in the moment and laser focused on what is happening in this moment, but use the opportunity when you've got people in a captive space, when they're having a good time, to think about the following year. And I know that's really hard to do in the moment, but you can really set yourself up for some success. So a good example of what we do in sports that could be an opportunity, maybe in the follow-up survey or in the initial purchase, might be putting down a deposit or sort of saving a place in line for next year, right? You get some people opting in ahead. Make sure whenever the event is going on, that you are collecting data, that you have dedicated people, dedicated locations to collect data for people that are coming out. It might just be the one time that you see them every year. You want to make sure that you capture that data so you can engage. Hope had a question: best strategy for moving the organization to the next level. So, getting back to what I said in the very, very beginning, one, be patient. Things take time. But, I think if you are thinking about every detail, right, and you're really doing the very best you can and creating an awesome experience, you're going to continue to grow. I would say for organizations that are just starting out, don't try to bite off more than you can chew, right? Pick the 4 or 5 things in terms of your organization, whether it's give back in the community, it's your pride event, and it's one other thing. Stay laser focused on those things and do them very, very well. The worst thing you can do is spread yourself, and I'm guessing a lot of you work with volunteers, spreading yourself and your volunteers too thin, where people don't want to come back, and maybe the experiences aren't at the level that you want them to be, and then fans won't have a good time and they won't come back. So when you're just starting out, just really do 2 or 3 things really, really well. So if it is that, if it's the Pride event, it's one other fundraiser a year, and it's your youth program, then absolutely do those things to the very, very best of your ability. Because what's going to happen is word is going to spread that you are a great organization, all the good you're doing, you're going to get more people supporting you, and that's going to give you the opportunity to expand. If you're starting out as a Pride organization in a community that is very conservative, what are the best ways to promote your organization in a positive light when there's pushback from the community? So early on in my career in the WNBA, now the Pride platform is very much, it's standard across all the league, all the markets do it and do various things in the community around it. Early on, to your point, Kat, there were different, at different times where people would say, oh, should we do that? I don't know. Is that rubbing people the wrong way? The way I really always positioned it is we are creating an event where everyone is welcome, period. We are creating an event where everyone is welcome. That's really hard to argue. And then, Kat, I would say too, those influencers in your community are really important as well. So who are they, right? Are they business owners? Is there a local politician that will get on board? You can't please everybody. You'll probably, we all, there's no doubt about it. We all will have people who are negative about one thing or the other. But if you can really align yourself with somebody maybe that is beloved in the community and is willing to promote what you're doing, that will help, right? Like that helps provide some air cover for you in those moments. But again, like it's really hard to dispute whenever you're saying to somebody who might be pushing back, all we're doing is creating an event where everybody in our community is welcome. Like, what are you going to say against that? So, Kat, I'm happy to share my information after this and have an individual, like actual in-person conversation or on the phone conversation if you like. So I hope that helps. I hope that helps. And then in terms of the event, we talked a little bit about, data collection. Make sure everybody who, is performing or, working your event, get all those people together, right? Sometimes we forget about, the people that might maybe sitting at the gate or maybe handling parking. Make sure everybody's on the same page in terms of the talking points that you want to communicate. Again, this gets back to doing things really, really well. My favorite saying is the devil is always in the details. So make sure, the very frontline people who are interacting with your attendees really understand what's going on and are in the know. So do they have a cheat sheet about here are all the, people that I need to contact about the various things. Here are their phone numbers. Those types of things can really head off, a disaster for you, right? Like there's an issue with the parking and your volunteer knows who to call in that moment. You can usually fix it pretty quickly. But if that volunteer doesn't know who to call, doesn't know what to do, you could, it's a bad experience. So I think thinking about that, and plus, pulling your volunteers in and giving them really a look behind the curtain, that gets them more engaged too. It gets them jazzed up because they're really in the know and excited about that. So make sure, everybody that's working the event, everybody that you're hiring, your vendors, they all have the talking points to make sure that the experience is fantastic. I'd love to know your thoughts on the attacks of trans athletes right now, the guys who are supporting the WNBA complaints, Devin. Yeah, it's a really interesting time in the landscape of athletics when you see everything that's going on around our country related to the NCAA tournament, the equality question. I think the next 5 years are going to be really, really interesting in how we navigate that. I think the good news is, again, the athletes really are the driving force and are so inspiring in what they're doing and leading the charge. So I think maybe I'm a little biased, but I feel like women have always been at the forefront of a lot of these things and have asserted themselves in a way that has helped create positive change in our country. And I don't expect anything any different on this front as well. Would you be willing to be a VIP for Pride in September? When is it? Where is it? I got to get back on the East Coast at some point, right? Hope. I would love to. I would love to come back and do all the Prides. I'm interested to know, I don't know if you guys can put it in the chat quickly, in person, virtual, like what have you guys been doing, sort of virtually? And then are you planning to have your in-person Prides? Salem, Mass. That sounds like a fun spot to be. I think that, I don't know about all of you, but, I think that's really the challenge with where we are. It feels like we're moving in a positive direction, right? We all hope that we're getting back to some sort of normalcy, but, also want to be really smart and safe until we are hopefully in the clear. September. Okay. So pushing out to fall makes a lot of sense. Hopefully we are in a really good place by the time we get to fall. I love the questions. I wish we were all together. So again, June, hybrid, New York City. Okay. A hybrid, so a little bit virtual, a little bit in person. Yeah. It's going to be interesting to how people navigate. Again, right now, it feels like we are moving in a direction that is allowing us to do more in person. For instance, our women's soccer team has their first home match in a couple of weeks, and we will be at reduced capacity. So able to have people in the building. It's outside, so that's a little bit easier to navigate. But seated in pods, socially distanced, obviously wearing masks. So we're getting there, right? It's at least is a step in a positive direction. In person, end of May and beginning of June. Okay, great. I love the youth event. That's great. It sounds like you all are being very, very creative. So I have no doubt that everybody's just excited to engage with everything you're doing virtually, but also, in person, excited to come back together. And, I think all the things we've talked about today, such a great opportunity this year in particular, whenever you do bring everybody back together, just really give a lot of thought to that data capture piece. Because, I think people are chomping at the bit to be back together, to be in person, to be social. So I think it's a real opportunity to engage with new people. And the virtual piece is great too. Again, we've learned so much about how to do this virtually, whether it's a happy hour, an educational event. We've all learned how to navigate this, that I think, in the end will make us better at what we do. I don't think the virtual opportunities will go away. I mean, I think from our perspective, it will be something we continue to offer. It allows us to do more. It's easier in our case for players to be involved, for coaches to be involved, because they just have to hop on a Zoom. So it absolutely doesn't replace in person. So a good combo of everything there, but it has certainly taught us a lot about that. So I really hope that I've given you guys, I'm happy to take more questions as people drop this in. I'm happy to provide my info here. Again, I think there's a lot of parallels to what you're doing, and, sort of working in what I would call an emerging sports market, because so much about what we're constantly doing is trying to bring new people in for the first time, make sure they have a great experience, so they want to come back and become a more passionate supporter or fan. So again, runs very parallel. And my key message to you today is just really stay true. Stay true to everything that you believe in, the belief of the organization. Let that thread connect to everything you're doing in the community, anybody you partner with. And it can be tempting at times to say, ooh, that's a real great partnership opportunity. But I'm telling you, don't do it if it isn't a good fit with your value system, with what you stand for. And I know that can be difficult because the funds help everything go. But in time, making sure that you are aligned on all fronts will pay far more dividends in everything that you do. So I wish everybody the best of luck. I need to thank Leo and Lindsay and everybody at outCT for having me. Just absolutely tremendous people, partners, people that they're never getting rid of me, even though I'm in Kansas, because I love the organization so much, and just appreciate all the work that you guys have done to put into today and this event. And I hope everybody gets a ton out of it. So best of luck, everybody. I'm gonna get all the names of your organizations and go follow you. So you've gained like 1 follower for sure today.
We just wanted to hop on and say thank you for being here today, and we wanted to thank everybody for being here.
Awesome job, Amber, and wonderful engagement from the crowd. That went about as well as we hoped.
Yeah, for real. This is our first event. So thank you so much. Good job, everybody.
Thank you to the interpreters. You did a beautiful job.
Yes.
It was seamless.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. And we will tell all of our participants that the next workshops will be at 11:15 under sessions, and you'll have 3 options there. So that'll be in a half hour.
Yeah. Oh, and if you remember, you can connect to one another in the chat session. So Amber, if there's anybody you want to talk to, or if anybody wants to get in touch with you, your info is there. So all good.
Great. I welcome anybody reaching out. Thanks, everybody.
All right. We'll see you all again in a half hour or so.